Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekin for a free $200 credit.
Tonight on This Week in Movies, reviews of Killer Joe and For a Good Time Call. Plus, our guest is Little Bird's director, Elgin James. It's all coming up on a brand new This Week in Movies right now. I was looking in the wrong place. I was looking at the wrong camera, Farrell. How many years have I been doing this now?
Why aren't you just looking at me all the time? That's the real
just
question.
gazing lovingly in your direction. How many years have I been doing this? I can't tell the front or the back of a camera. It's been a long day.
It's been a long day.
That's how you know.
But an exciting day because we have good movies to discuss.
We do. We have, well, one that I've seen. I'm presuming you like it.
And some interesting news of the day because I was very surprised and I'm not sure how I feel about Al Pacino as
Jopa. Yeah, Ashton Kutcher's already tweeted how delighted he is with the news. Remember when he... how could they fire Jopa?
Exactly, yeah. And then he regretted it, and he said he didn't know what he was talking about at the
what
time.
with the guy looking the other way as children got raped? He was like, he second-guessed that call.
Obviously, the whole thing was horrible, but I feel like I was sort of surprised how much emphasis people put on Paterno, because to me, it's the guy that did the...
Jerry Sandusky is
the evil one.
Well, Jerry Sandusky is the most evil one, but we don't have to wade into this on the movie show. But
it's just sad because his entire
career... He knew
career...
that this was happening and then did not do anything because he was worried about the reputation of the university and the football program, and that is horribly a wrong thing, I would like to say. Just Lon thinks that was wrong. Just so that's on the record.
As does the world, my friend.
As does the world, right, exactly. But I mean...
I think it's interesting that I wonder how you feel about biopics and, like, when is too soon and when is the right time? I mean, to me, this is very, very current. I don't know if we're ready for the movie version. Like, it feels like a Lifetime movie they do when it's like, or Law and Order episode.
And Deadline, which broke the story, did say they weren't 100% on is this a theatrical or a TV production. I feel like it's
Pacino doing a TV.
He did that. You Don't Know Jack HBO movie.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, maybe it was an HBO movie because you're right with the Sarah Palin movie. But don't you feel like in a feature film? I don't know, it feels weird to go to a theater to see a movie about this. And what I was thinking of was Social Network, and I felt the same way when I saw that. I was like, this is weird that this is one of those first...
But a great movie.
It was great, but people did talk about, it was our generation, it happened to us, and it was... Usually when you go to movies and it's about something that really happened, it's years ago, you possibly weren't even alive then, or it's these other characters.
Yeah, I mean,
now
is
it a new trend?
It is tempting to take a story like this because it is dealing with grand epic themes. I mean, you could see why this would appeal to a filmmaker, to a storyteller. I mean, it's a guy with this incredibly long legacy. He was lauded as a hero. I mean, he ran this university. He ran the city that it was in. He was a legend. And I mean, I went to UCLA, and so the immediate comparison I would always jump to was John Wooden, who was an icon when I went to UCLA. I mean, he would come to campus, people would go crazy. He's like the winningest college basketball coach in history.
Okay.
But even he was not currently still active. He was from like the previous generation. So even that level, this was well beyond that. So to go from that to then having this horrible thing discovered and to have this fall from grace while you're still alive, and then he died while this was all going on. Yeah. It is like Shakespearean in its breadth.
And you could see Pacino just chomping at the bit to do it. But
I wish 70s Pacino rather than today's Pacino maybe was taking it on. But it does. It feels icky and it feels coarse to so quickly jump into let's make this a movie and let's make some money off of this.
But is it the subject matter? Would this movie in 5 years, if The Social Network was done, not now, but in 10 years, would it matter? Is time going to make the movie feel more appropriate?
Well, I mean,
or are we just not used to this, turning biopics so quickly?
It's an impossible question, because if the movie was made 10 years from now, it would be the movie that was right for that. It would be about every movie's about when that movie is made. So if you made Social Network in 10 years, it wouldn't be the movie it is now, because now it's about this moment in history, and then it would be about that moment in history and what the Social Network sort of reflects on it.
What do you think?
So just like when you see movies that were like made during the Great Depression versus movies today about the Great Depression, it's like, well, it's a totally different movie.
Yeah, okay.
Because now it's about us looking back and like making parallels to our own time, whereas then it was about, hey, this is happening.
How do you feel
outside.
about the casting? How do you feel about Pacino in that role?
I haven't really liked Pacino in a movie at this point in a while. I guess I'm thinking like Heat, maybe, and even that one is he was playing a coke fiend, and then they took that out of the movie.
He's turned into like a little bit of a caricature of himself. Like I think if he's well directed,
he already has for 10 years.
A lot. Yeah, I mean,
you're a kid today.
It started with was it Devil's Advocate. I was like,
it was
what
even before then that he was basically playing a larger than life version of Al Pacino.
Yeah, if he's well directed though, if he gets somebody that like really focuses on like the subtlety of performance, like perhaps the movie we're going to discuss, Killer Joe, because I think that was somebody who took actors that have a big tendency to go over the top and make things campy and into like a black comedy. If he is directed well, I think he could be good. I mean, I can't think of somebody else that I
the
saw
man
in the
is
role.
a friggin' legend, and who far be it from me to say Al Pacino couldn't be great in a movie. I mean, Al Pacino's great in dozens of movies. I mean, the guy is amazing. But
who's Sandusky?
Sandusky. Jeez, I mean, I don't know.
Alan Arkin.
It's a tough one because any actor taking it on would have to it'd have to be somebody you don't have any real feelings of like.
I think it would have to be like an But Alan Arkin's likable. I know, but that's what would make it interesting. Someone you would because that's what the appeal would be is you never would think that this guy.
I can't believe we're fantasy casting the Joe Paterno.
Okay, yeah, we should move on.
There's something weird.
Let's move on. Let's go to Killer Joe because
let's talk about Killer Joe.
I have been dying to discuss this with you, but holding myself back.
All right, so Killer Joe, it's an adaptation. Tracy Letts adapted his own play, Killer Joe. It is the story of a family of I think it's fair to call them rednecks. Trailer park denizens, and they four of them hatch a plot to kill the mother of the children, the ex-wife of the father, is played by Thomas Hayden Church. And in order to pull off this plan for life insurance money, they bring in a very, very crooked police detective named Joe Cooper, played by Matthew McConaughey. Here's a clip from the trailer.
Cooper, he's a cop, a detective actually. Got a little business on the side.
What'd you do?
He kills people. Mom's got a $50,000 life insurance policy. Killer Joe's a professional. He'll do this right.
There's murder we're talking about. I ain't agreed to nothing.
I heard y'all talking about killing Mama. I think it's a good idea.
Well, there you go.
So this I'll start off with just saying this is a great movie. It's a lot of fun, which is surprising considering how dark and sort of grim it is in a lot of ways.
When you were watching this movie, were you at all thinking how I would be reacting?
I knew going in that you had already tweeted to me that you really liked it.
That's true.
So the suspense was killed that you enjoyed it. I feel a little bit of pride and a little personal responsibility that I have brought you around to being a little more open-minded with
horrible, sexually deviant films.
And depravity. I mean, a lot of the movie is taking. It's interested in these characters' perversities and depravities, the things about them that are, icky, and it sort of takes a sick kind of glee in the fact that it's about such loathsome, horrible people who nonetheless are, in their own odd way, sort of charming. It reminded me of the Coen brothers.
And
Blood Simple in particular, but they have a lot of films about people who are horrible, and yet at the same time, there is something that's just idiosyncratic and eccentric and amusing about them, and so you find yourself sucked in. Blood Simple is a great example. Also, Fargo. You would think of like the Steve Buscemi.
Well, here's
Peter
the difference, though.
Stormare.
Like what I felt like when the movie started is that this is a film that could easily be a black comedy, but it doesn't turn into one. And you see people like Thomas Hayden Church and Gina Gershon that I think can go wildly over the top and campy. And I like them in some movies, and I think they're horrible in others. And they're so well directed in this, and they're so good. And the movie looks amazing. Did you notice, like, I felt like 70% of it was shot at that magic hour where everything is sort of that blue color, and the colors are vibrant. And, 3 minutes into it, there's the vajayjay shot. So early on, this is setting the tone. Although I guarantee you that was a hairpiece situation.
I feel like that was intentionally done. First of all, the movie is not filled with nudity. It's really all...
No, the NC-17 is from the violence.
It's all front-loaded. I don't know if I agree with that either, because it is violent, but I don't know if it's no more violent than
sexual.
A rough episode of The Sopranos.
I think it's
nudity. Because there's a lot of pantsless ladies in the first 10, 15 minutes.
I will say that I did see 9.5 Weeks many times, and I really liked it. And at this point, with the number of movies we've seen, I felt like I had pretty much, in terms of the sexual love scenes, what else can we do? I thought I'd seen it all, but I will never look at Kentucky Fried Chicken the same way again.
Kentucky
I am
K-Fry
scarred
C, as they
for
call it
life.
in the movie. K-Fry C, which actually interested me. I wondered, is that a thing Tracy Letts has heard in the
did he?
world, or did he just make up?
Because
I've
you
never
weren't
heard
allowed.
anyone,
Maybe you weren't allowed to use Kentucky Fried Chicken in such a disgusting,
or even KFC. You
abhorrent
couldn't
way.
say the initials KFC.
Yeah,
but I've never heard anyone say K-Fry C to refer to Kentucky Fried Chicken.
But that was all sort of part of their like hickling. Like,
right.
I
Well,
don't
that's what I'm
know.
saying. Like, I don't know if that's purely Tracy Letts being clever and coming
You
up with
actually
something.
think the NC-17 is from the sex in the
Yes.
movie?
Well, I think if everybody kept their clothes on for this whole movie and it was just this amount of violence, I don't think it would be NC-17.
Oh, I totally think it was
because
the
it's.
violence.
I mean, it's like a Sopranos episode. Like a couple people get beaten.
Well, I think it was interesting that last week we discussed Lawless, where we were saying, here's violence, and for me that really doesn't like violent movies, it's shot in such a beautiful
Lawless is
way.
more violent.
This is in your face. The camera is so close to the violence, like you literally are feeling the blood. You feel these punches.
Yeah, I mean,
it's in your face.
It's gritty and visceral, and I mean that's something
it's relentless.
Friedkin has always been really, great at that sort of the immediacy of his violence in his films. It's not even French Connection, sort of when it was new, was shocking to people in terms of
But either way,
you feel the beating.
Didn't you feel like? I mean, but that is extremely violent. Yes, there are some questionable sex scenes, but I still didn't think it warranted an NC-17
No,
in
of course
any
not.
way.
No,
in any way.
I mean,
Nor did
that's
the
the thing.
Blue. What's the one with Michelle Williams and
no
Ryan
movies deserve an
Gosling?
NC-17. Blue Valentine's.
Blue Valentine. No, not at all. Like, who is
But
making?
when
these
have you
decisions?
ever seen a movie that you thought, oh yeah, this should be no kids should be allowed to see this even with parental consent? Like we have R ratings and
Into
then we
the
have
Void.
porn and like. There doesn't need to be this extra distinction between R-rated and porn. Like this porn is porn, and R-rated movies are R-rated movies that are for adults. And like, why add this extra like, ooh, you're particularly naughty? Like it's juvenile. It's silly.
It's juvenile.
It is. It's
How
juvenile.
fantastic is
I do
Matthew
disagree with you.
McConaughey?
Before we move on, and this all links up to your next point. It is a black comedy. This is a dark comedy. It is
I
fun.
don't think it is.
It absolutely
this
is designed to be fun.
full-on drama. Like I think every time there is no
The audience
laughs
will have
in
to
this
go.
movie.
Oh, come on! What about that? I don't want to blow anything. This is early on, so it's not a spoiler. Matthew McConaughey tells a story to another character about a man who, in a fight with his girlfriend, lights his genitals on fire.
Right. That's not
which
funny.
Builds to a obvious comic point at the end. It's dryly funny, but it is.
I think to me,
this movie
when I
is a
think
dark
black comedy, I think Grosse Point Blank. I think Fargo. To me, this veered on the line, but I think he played it like a straight.
I mean, just in the same way that Blood Simple has comic high points, so does this film. And Matthew McConaughey in particular is playing it very dry.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
But is dryly
And
funny
so
in
naked.
this role.
He is so naked. And I did see Magic Mike, but his body, it's like it is the statue of David. You know those dogs that have no hair? Those little skinny, like that is what he kind of.
Chihuahuas?
Yeah, maybe. He's like this skinless perfection. I mean, you
No,
could
you
like
mean
sculpt
hairless.
him out of butter.
He has skin. You said skinless. He has
That would be so disgusting.
He has all of his skin.
He
in
has
this
all of
film.
his skin.
He keeps a
It's
full
magnificent.
coat of skin.
I don't understand. I mean,
It's a very good performance from him.
he's fantastic in it, and
he does show his butt
I liked
cheeks.
how the story unfolded because it is a very, like you said at the top, a murder for money, like a murder for hire sort of.
It's a very sort of generic
Yes.
story movie
That does
plot
take
in some
some
ways.
twists that unfold that
Yeah.
I think keep you very interested. And let's talk about the ending without revealing the ending. The best ending I've seen in a movie in ages.
It is. I mean, yeah, it
it's
builds to
phenomenal.
a sort of almost cartoon noir. That it's noir, but
I
in a way that
don't see
is.
the humor cartoon aspect whatsoever. But the ending is fantastic.
I think the audience will see this and be watching it and be like, Farrell is crazy. Of course, this is supposed to be funny.
No.
You're crazy.
No.
It's called Killer Joe.
Although I would say in terms of the comments department, more people seem to err on the side of you being right and I being wrong. However, do you just agree? Do you just agree that the ending was great? Like, don't you love it when they
The movie's great. The ending, I liked it the whole way through. I mean, if I was making my best of the year list right now, I realize I probably have not seen most of the movies that will eventually be on that list. I think this would probably rank pretty high.
I think so too. And the more surprising part of it is that I really never even thought I wanted to see it, period.
Yeah.
Much less like it, much less have it like stay
And what,
with
Bug
me.
was the last film I think Friedkin did that was based on a Tracy Letts play.
The one with
Michael
Ashley
Shannon
Judd.
and
That scarred me for life too.
I did not really care for that one as much. I sort
It's
of
just
was wary
claustrophobic
going
and
into
over
this
the
one because
top.
I did not have a great association with that one. But then this one turns out to be
it's fantastic, and it is beautifully shot too. So it just adds the levels, and everyone is at the top of their game. There was not one performance in that didn't work. And actually, we'll ask Elgin about it because Juno Temple is in it, and she is a friend of his and starred in Little Bird. So I'm curious if he's seen it and if he loved it as much as we did.
Let's move on.
Moving on to For a Good Time Call. This is the story of two jobless former college frenemies who basically decide to start a phone sex line in order to pay for their posh New York City apartment.
Are there still phone sex lines?
Apparently so.
Is it set in the 80s?
And no, not, and phones with cords and everything too, because
So
they
it is
use one
set in
of
the
those.
80s.
It doesn't actually ever say that.
Acknowledge that.
But it
okay.
does give that appearance.
Fair enough.
It stars Lauren Miller, who also wrote the film, and Ari Grainer. It's directed by Jamie Travis. Let's take a look.
This is my friend Katie. This is my friend Lauren. She's gonna drive you home, okay? Please, please, please.
Is this yours? Yeah, sorry, I think it's empty. Perfect! Stop! This is my new car!
I do this all the time.
Ta-da! See, you never spill that off.
Get out.
You're in hysterical!
So as I mentioned, Lauren Miller wrote the script. She's also Mrs. Seth Rogen, which is
Hence the immediate pee humor within 2 seconds.
And he does make a cameo, of course, as one of the guys that calls the phone sex line.
Sure.
Ari Grainer is phenomenal in this. She's hilarious. She looks, could not get past it. To me, she looks like a young Bette Midler, which is probably not a compliment, but I do love me some Bette Midler, but that's who she reminded me of. She's great in it. It is sort of how I felt about Bachelorette. It's a little bit of Kissing Jessica Stein crossed with Bride Wars, because I'm sure you get those references awesomely.
Wars? Oh, yes.
But
Anne
remember,
Hathaway thing.
here was Jessica Westfeld, who I think is a very talented writer, but, wasn't getting any acting jobs. So she, like Matt and Ben, wrote a movie and put herself in it. I think Lauren Miller pretty much did the same thing. The script is good. The whole time I was watching it, I couldn't stop thinking that this would have been a better movie if there was an Emma Stone or a Kate Hudson in her role. She's a fine actress. She just isn't amazing, and she doesn't have a ton of screen presence, and Ari sort of completely dominates her.
It's interesting. She would write a film, star in it, and then give somebody else like the plum
funny
role.
lines,
yeah.
but she wouldn't have worked in the other character. And the other character, she does questionable things. I mean, it's fun.
We reviewed Clown like 2 weeks
The
ago.
movie,
How could you find this
I know.
questionable?
Well, because I'm just saying, why would she not choose the juicier role?
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
she felt like that was a little much, which I give her some
Fair
credit
enough.
for. I would like to see her go right for Girls, HBO's Girls. She's very, very tapped into the female psyche. She writes really well. I just don't need to see her on camera, and she was sort of the weak link in the movie. The other problem was this guy that directed it, Jamie Travis, has only done shorts. It literally looked like it was filmed on a mini DV cam. Every shot was so blown out. The lighting was horrible. They're all, it was like overlit, the whole film. And the whole idea is that they're doing this phone sex line so that they can keep this Gramercy Park apartment. There's one shot walking on the streets, like a la Sex in the City, where you really appreciate New York City. To me, all the movies' interiors, I get it, they're on a phone sex line, but I just miss New York City. If you're going to feature the city, like, put them out on the street, like, get some character in the movie, and it feels very... it feels like a waste. There's one shot towards the end of the movie where they're walking down the street to the brownstone. You're like, oh my God, it's New York City. I forgot, and it's great.
Doesn't it just feel? I mean, I haven't seen this film, but doesn't it feel super irrelevant to be making a movie about being a phone sex operator in 2012? It's just, when was the last time that was like an interesting, relevant
let's say
story?
that it didn't meet. Let's say it was about the 80s, even though they don't clarify that.
But
Like, why would it matter?
What
if
is it? But what is it related? I mean, what is?
Because
What
it's
is the
funny.
hook?
It provides for a comic joke. Because these are both girls that are not sexual in their own ways. They have horrible dating lives.
There's seems like make up a webcam girl or something and pull it into the now.
I like that it's a little old-fashioned. It works. That part works. I don't know if I loved or hated Justin
I'm sure
Long
they're in the
it.
chat room right now. I don't have my laptop in front of me. They're like, there's totally still phone sex lines. What does Harris talk about? I'm sure that's going on.
I'm glad to know that you're not participating in them, though. That makes me happy. The Justin Long has this cameo in it, and he's this over-the-top gay BFF. And in certain scenes, he's very, very funny, and he's the comic relief. And then in others, you're like, he's just like he's doing a SNL skit, and it's just too much. But he's fine. I mean, it's one of those movies. If you're gonna watch it at home on a Friday night, it's cute enough. But
you're not selling me.
It could have been
I gotta
better.
be honest.
It just could have been a lot better. But I think that she is talented. I just hope that she like moves into the screenwriting realm. I think you would like this less than Bachelorette.
Probably. I mean, I like Bachelorette a surprising amount.
But it's fun. It's got some cute cameos, and for a first effort, I think she did. She did a good job. It was cute enough.
Ringing endorsement.
I mean, stop
it. Gets 2 out of 5 shoes.
I know I didn't wear special shoes today, but
we
I
don't
wear
have shoe
boots.
cam set up this weekend. Anyway.
I don't know if these warranted it, but they are sort of fun boots.
Okay. They can't see it.
I mean,
also, most people are listening to this anyway.
I don't. They like to see you too. They tune in to see your hair and makeup every week.
Yes, of course.
So should we bring in our guest tonight?
Let's bring him in.
Elgin James is receiving a lot of buzz for his feature debut, Little Birds, which stars Kay Panabaker and Juno Temple.
And which we talked about with Kay Panabaker
a couple
weeks ago.
Exactly. It was at Sundance and was sort of one of the breakout hits from last year's festival. Let's take a look.
What is this place?
This is where we live.
Let's go back. What? No.
There's a bunch of kids screwing around.
Well, welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This is awesome.
Before we get into Little Birds, let me ask, have you seen Killer Joe, and what did you think of Juno's performance?
You know what should be NC-17 is your description of Matthew McConaughey. Because it was just creeping me out out there.
I don't even have a thing for him, which is ironic. I just really appreciate like a physique that looks like it takes a lot of work.
Well, you would want to also skin him. That was pretty strange,
I know.
too.
I have a habit of mixing up words a lot. What did I do last week? I said something about Craigslist instead of Cliff Notes.
I'm only half listening.
Casual encounters?
Yeah.
I haven't seen Killer Joe yet because I've been so busy with Little Birds, but I heard all the stories while they're going on there and about Matthew McConaughey's really tight butt, Juno says. It's a very tight butt.
She has some love scenes with him. Did she have a good time making that film?
So she had a great time making that film, but that's why I can't go see my friend in films because she's always naked.
Huh.
Even in mine, it's just like
I was supposed to say she's taking your film.
I know, but that's different. That's why in our beginning we also kind of, as you said with Killer Joe, we have it because she's supposed to be 15, so we want to take out all the sexuality. It's just from the very first opening scene, she's nude, and then as it goes on, and then even there's the sex scene that her and Kyle Gallner have, it's just very clumsy and awkward and not sexualized because she was a kid. But it's weird also because it's someone else.
I wanted to ask you about that scene because there is a very graphic love scene that involves Juno, and she is your friend. Yeah. So directing that, was that a horrible day on set for you, or was it?
It was the worst, and we knew we were going. I mean, she's one of my closest friends, and we worked so hard on this for 2 years. And that's what's so crazy, because not only is she a close friend of mine, but also J.R. Bourne, who's a brilliant actor and is in the end of the film. He's also very close. So and there's just the three of us in this room in between the takes, and I was just like, I'm done. I've made, Juno and I are very close, so we know each other's secrets, so we know how to that's what went into the film, and I know her secrets to get her to this place, but I'm like, it's been like 15 days now, or she was like 17. I'm like, I can't make my best friend cry anymore. Like, I can't do it. And it also was just horrible just to hear her scream, and it was really tough. And I was like, we're done. And she's like, we're not even close to done. Like, she's like, we got to keep going. We don't have it yet. We don't have it yet. And we shot for like another 2 to 3 hours, and she was right. Everything that's in the film, even though it's just a very short thing, is all from the later stuff. Yeah, she's way braver and tougher than I am.
You have a fascinating story. I got to see the movie early at a screening, and you were at it, and I came up to you afterwards, and I said, and I had to ask you a couple of questions, and then, of course, you coming on the show. Your story and the journey to getting this film made is amazing. I mean, we're talking about there's been, you were a member of a gang, there was a stint in prison, you were homeless for a while. How did all of this influence the story that you actually told and the film you actually ended up making?
Yeah, well, that's what happened. When I finally got out of that lifestyle, like, I dug for myself that I was in for 15 years. It was like my own fault. It wasn't like, oh, wow, I just fell into this hole as a gang member. I sought that out, and it was a life, that I was fully responsible for. But then when I got out, I'm like, I want to make movies. And I'm like, this is going to be great. I need to get, go away, move 3,000 miles away, make movies. And then I'm like, well, how do you make movies? I had no idea. But really quickly, a life story got put together about my life. And I was just worried that I just got out of a lifestyle and they were going to end up like glamorizing the violence, and glamorizing the bloodshed and making us into kind of the gang that I was in and kind of these like Robin Hood vigilantes, which is the quick sell, but that's not really true. There's a lot of blackness and wreckage and like, horror underneath. So that's why I'm like, well, how am I going to do this myself? I walked away from the project and I was just like, 15-year-old girls. I'll make me and my best friend running away from our small towns or leaving our small towns and ending up in Boston about these two girls like leaving the Salton Sea and ending up in LA.
Did you have trepidation about, obviously writing it about teenage boys, which was the first incarnation of the film, that's
right.
You. So then to take it and to say, okay, I'm going to get into the female psyche, much less like adolescent teen girls, did you feel confident that you could tell that story?
I didn't know what I could do. I'd never written a script before, so I had no idea what was going to happen. So I didn't know what, but the girls are just so much smarter and more interesting than dudes. As a 15-year-old boy, just be like, whatever, man, screw you. But like girls, like I would say, like, I say something, I just mean that. Like, I don't go much deeper. But my wife says something, she means like 1,000 things, and I can't figure any of them out, So with girls and just like that kind of, I've also just had so many strong females in my life, from my mom starting off with, to my wife, to Juno Temple, to Reed Morano, who's a cinematographer on the film, to Suzanne Spangler, who's the editor, to Michelle Satter from the feature film program, like all these strong women.
Did you give the script to women and say, read this and tell me if this dialogue rings true, or did you not have to go to them for help?
I have older sisters, and I was just like the pesky like creep that was just like always traipsing behind and like listening in, and that's the only way I can really think that that's where it came from, just because they're like way, much older than me, of just like listening in and just like reading their diaries and like being like a, more of a little brother.
With the evolution, obviously, when you do indie movies, sometimes they can take years, and this one did take a little while, and you actually had to spend some time in prison during a crucial time in the film's development and release. So how did you manage that, and how hard was that for you to do, at this time when this great thing is happening to you and then this horrible thing is happening?
Yeah, it was almost good in a way, because I finally got to like I'm like, yeah, I put like a period on the end of that sentence of my life. Like, I left that lifestyle. Like, look at me, I'm all redeemed. And then, the federal government didn't think so. They thought I had a little more I still had to give. But I was discovered really by the Sundance Labs and their feature film program, went to the labs, and for the first time in my life, I had positive male role models, which is ridiculous because I was in my 30s, and it was more ridiculous that it was Robert Redford and Ed Harris. For the first time I realized, like, what it means to be a man. To me, before, a man meant how much like damage and horror you can kind of cause to the world, and then to realize these guys who are men but are also very honest about who they are, and they don't try to hide that creativity and vulnerability that I try to keep crammed down. So from my discussions with Robert Redford, I ended up making a vow of nonviolence. I never raised my fist or my voice to another human being again. I come home, I'm like, this is great. I'm hanging out with my dude, Juno. It's so easy to be a pacifist. And then I was arrested by a dozen FBI agents outside my house. And all, like I say, like all, or not all, but a lot of the face and neck tattooed thugs and killers who my brothers for years split. And this little English lass was still there. It was like little, Juno Temple was still there and so fiercely loyal and brave. And we thought this movie would never get made, and we still got together like 3 to 4 times a night to talk about the character, daydream about.
So was the movie shot when you had to go to jail?
Not at all. No. What happened is, like, we had a little bit of time, so we knew I was going to go to prison, and we had to scramble together, and that's when we put the money back together. We shot it in 17 days. We premiered at Sundance. And then that was in January 2011. I went to prison in March 2011. I just got out in March 2012.
So you basically got out in time to promote the movie.
That's exactly right.
You're like, I'm just gonna like squeeze in a little time in there.
Yeah, it was good. It was like a writing sabbatical. I was just like there. I was in like prison. I read 101 books. I just learned more about my craft. I was like plucked right out of Sundance, where you have people telling you, oh, you're brilliant, and you have other people saying, oh, you're horrible, you know, and I got to really sit down and think about, oh, what are my strengths as a storyteller, and what can I do to become better?
Did you tell your fellow inmates? Like, did they know that you're like the hot Sundance director and you're just in there for a year and then you're going to go out and have this directing career?
You know what? This world quickly disappeared. You know what I mean? It's actually a lot of people knew me more when I went in there from kind of like more of the gang stuff.
Sure.
And so that was weird. That'd be like, oh yeah, this is great. We're gonna run this prison. Like we're here. And then I was just like, because you don't know where it's like going to your first day of school. You're like, who am I gonna be? You're going to prison. It's like, oh. And then I'm just like, yeah, that's right, we are. And I'm like, wait, no, wait. You know, I have this other life. Like I have all this stuff. So it was very, and I had Brian Grazer and the people at Imagine that had given me a screenwriting contract. The day I was sentenced, they had me push through so I could sign it. So I'd have something at like the end of this tunnel just to work on to make sure I could stay focused while I was in there. You know, and so my wife could have money while I was gone too. I've just been so lucky with incredible like mentors and people.
And I know when you're shooting a movie in 17 days and you're on a small budget, a lot of things, you know, can't get done the way you want. So I'm always curious, you know, is there something that you really wanted to do or that you couldn't afford to do or you didn't have the days to do that you would have done if you could have?
Yeah, you know what, we shot. I mean, that's why, my dude Juno, and also Kay Pannenbaker, because Juno had 2 years. He just had Kay on here a little while ago, such a brilliant little thing. And, you know, Juno and I had 2 years. Kay came on like a week before. And so we had no time. Kay and I had to get to know each other literally like they're setting up the lights and we're telling each other secrets, you know, like I'm telling her like, this is why I wrote this scene and this is what it means to me, something about my mom or something about being a kid. And she would give me her part of that and then be like, okay, cool, we got to go. You know, so it was this amazing thing, and her and Juno would do the same thing. So literally, I don't know any other way to make a movie, so I was lucky. We were shooting like 18 hours a day. One day we shot like almost a full 24. And as Juno ended that day in our opening scene where she's in the tub, and you see these things kind of floating, and she keeps screaming. We had to do the takes again and again, and it was cold water. But the stuff floating is because the gaffer would have to walk into the tub, so it's like his toe jam and like dead skin and stuff. It's disgusting. But she's such a trooper. She'd been up since like 2 a.m. She'd been in the Pacific Ocean at 4 o'clock that morning, you know. She just like didn't bat an eyelash.
You talked about how the Sundance Labs really sort of saved your life and turned them around. For people that are unfamiliar with them, you know, can you explain a little bit about what they are?
What they do is they basically, Robert Redford set it up in 1981 with Michelle Satter, and they basically just take artists, whether you're a screenwriter or a director, and they take you, and it's like you go out to the mountains in Utah, and you have people that are more established. You know, I had Ed Harris, Catherine Hardwick, Joan Darling, Joan Tewksbury, and these kind of advisors. And it's not like school. Like, I didn't know what a grip or a gaffer was. And their thing is like, okay, but you like grew up punk rock your whole life, so you know when something feels fake or inauthentic. So tap into that, you know, and that's how you work with your actors. So they basically take your strengths and then they just push you. Like I say, it's like they lovingly wrap you in cotton and then throw you off a cliff, you know? It's so hard. There's lots of tears. It's really, really tough, but they're pushing you to find out who you really are and your real voice.
Has Redford seen the film?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, he's seen the film. Yeah, it was. I mean, that was the biggest thing because my parents are both gone. You know, I dedicate the film to them both. So basically, going back and having, I mean, it's more personal thing, but I'll say just like to have him and also Michelle like to hug me and say that they're proud of me. It was just like that's like the closest thing that I have to, you know, having that kind of feeling.
So you got this movie made. You're done with, you know, all of the bad stuff. It sounds like that chapter is closed. So what's next for you? Are you already working on your next film? Do you know what you want to do?
Yeah, I have. I have a film that I'm shooting in the spring with Jamie Patrikoff, who produced Blue Valentine you mentioned earlier, and also Little Birds. I have a couple projects that I'm doing with Brian Grazer and the people over at Imagine. I got a lot going on, but everything that I do, including this film that I'm going to shoot, I have to have Juno in. You know what I mean? Like, much as I want to have my friends, I will write her a role. I just can't imagine being there without like having your dude have your back. So
She's your muse.
She's with, and it's almost like, and that's so true. It's almost, that feels almost like vaguely like weird or kind of like sexist or something. Like, she's just like my collaborator. She's just like my dude. You know what I mean? Like, she feels, and then also my cinematographer Reed. They're just people that make you the best that you can be and make you better. And they definitely, just like my wife, make me the best person I can be.
I know Reed, actually, she worked on a reality show that I knew a while back in New York, and she also was in, we discussed last week, Side by Side, that documentary, and so she was a big voice in that and had a lot to say. She's done fantastic films. Was it Winter's Bone did she do?
No, she did Frozen River.
The
other cold one.
Yep.
Yeah. One of those indie
Get them
ones.
good views.
Yeah, well, some indie that's really
talented.
depressing. Yeah, no, she's brilliant, and that's why we shot on, we shot on 35, we shot on film. It was really important.
Are you doing your next one on film or digital?
Only on film.
It is interesting. Now that we've seen that documentary, I'm always watching a movie and wondering which is which and why did this director choose it? Because you really do see both sides of it. Right, but totally. I love that people have a passion for one and they have no interest whatsoever.
No interest in digital at all. I feel like film just sucks you in more. It's more like those are the gods that I want to like try to tap into from like John Ford and George Stevens and all of that. That's just like only film. Only film. And Reed, I should say, was 7 months pregnant when we shot Little Birds 2.
Really?
So we shot two perf because I'm a huge John Ford fan, so I wanted to feel like Technoscope. And so we got a 2-perf camera flown in from New Zealand, and it's 50 pounds, and she's her own operator. She had it on her shoulder the whole time, so like I said.
Well, congratulations on the film. Lon and I both enjoyed it thoroughly,
Thank you so much.
We've been having fun promoting it.
I appreciate it.
It's one of those
awesome.
indies that people should, make sure they get out and see, and it's in theaters now.
That's right.
Our last segment is our favorite. It's my first time doing our Watch This Now, and my selection, shocker among shockers, is Bronson, which if you are a Tom Hardy fan, you will appreciate because I'm going to sound like I am just the girl that loves naked men, but he's naked for a ton of this movie.
You really do sound like that
I really
girl.
do. It reminded me
to.
so much of Bullhead, which I also really enjoyed in terms of just this nature of a movie that's about a tortured soul. It's a character study. Tom Hardy and that Matthias Schoenaerts, their bodies, their silhouettes are pretty much exactly the same. You really, if you're a fan of Drive, this is the same director, Nicholas Winding Refn, and it is he makes an 80s soundtrack, another character in the movie. He did it in Drive. He does it in this film. This is an artsier film. There's animated sequences. There's fantasy sequences. It didn't register with me the way Drive did. It was not a narrative in the same way, but it's still a fascinating film. And Tom Hardy really is obviously just a super talent. And it is this visceral character that he creates. He is a monster. It's a little bit of Hannibal Lecter in there. It's a little bit of the character from Bullhead. If you like The Prophet, which I did not love, that was super violent, but I know all guys loved it. Prison movie. I feel like to me it's a combination of Drive and The Prophet and Bullhead. Am I giving a good, accurate?
I think it's definitely in a line with his other films. He likes to do movies about these very enigmatic, very distant, sort of hard to pin down, very violent, almost sociopaths, but who nonetheless have this very sort of like worn-in humanity. So like Drive, and this one, Valhalla Rising, which is about like a silent Viking named One Eye. His movies all have that in common, and this one is sort of particularly fascinating just because the character is so contradictory. I mean, everything about him is just, directly contradicts everything else about him, which makes him fascinating. He's this crazy
criminal, and he yet was doing it because
but also
he wants to be famous.
a great artist, and also like very creative mind, and like he sucks people in, like they're drawn to him, even
and
at the same time as he just likes to pummel
not
them.
that this was at the time, but Bane, with that mask. I mean, there's a scene in the movie where he's literally wearing a very similar face mask, and he's in a cage because he's so
Poor
freaking
Tom Hardy.
violent.
People just
it's like you're just terrified. You just feel like if he's let
him.
out of his cage, he's going to rip your throat out. He is
Quite
that
possibly.
terrifying. And he's really like 5'9" in person. I mean, he is not an intimidating looking
And yet
guy.
another, we were talking last week about his penchant for doing like crazy accents, which again, this one doesn't sound like any other character
and the
he's
mustache.
ever played.
This is what is it? It's not a handlebar.
He's got a handlebar thing going on.
But it curls up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a French handlebar. He creates this whole physical look, and I feel like the movie, when they wrote it, I don't know if he was needed to be naked the way he felt like his clothes were off in almost every scene. He's in jail. Do men walk around their own cells like naked all the time?
I just feel like maybe I should have done some push-ups before I came on the show.
Yeah, really.
I feel so inadequate now.
Ignored now. Like, listen, it's about Tom Hardy. Let's talk Tom Hardy and McConaughey.
But it's on Netflix now. It's streaming, and you can get it.
Watch this now.
You can watch it. And I think that's it for our show.
That's it. Close it out.
We will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Check out Bronson if you're interested in your Tom Hardy fan. Check out Little Birds. And Lon and I coming together on Killer Joe is maybe the movie you should rush out and go see this week.
Yes.
And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you again next Friday night at 7 o'clock Pacific time. Bye, guys.